The mysterious discovery, the box of Ezekiel. In the digital annals of Reddit lore, few discoveries have sparked as much curiosity and intrigue as what became known as the box of Ezekiel. In 2013, a Reddit user with the handle #TramStoppedDan stumbled upon what appeared to be nothing more than an old weathered wooden suitcase poking conspicuously from a trash bin. Most passers-by would have ignored it, a relic of someone's forgotten past, discarded without thought. But curiosity, as it often does, urged Dan to investigate. What he uncovered was not just a suitcase, but a Pandora's box filled with cryptic clues, arcane imagery, and controversial speculation. Inside the box were pages upon pages of intricately hand-drawn maps, rendered with a precision that suggested the work of someone both deeply committed and highly imaginative. Alongside the maps were sketches of bizarre mechanical contraptions that bore a striking resemblance to ancient technologies reimagined through the lens of modern science fiction. But what truly stirred the online community were the unsettling images that seemed to depict extraterrestrial events, figures, and crafts that looked eerily similar to depictions of alien sightings that have circulated in UFO subcultures for decades. Even more compelling were the pages of dense manic writing that accompanied the visuals, filled with references to government conspiracies, celestial beings, and hidden truths buried beneath layers of myth and misdirection. Dan spent several days attempting to decipher the contents on his own. But it quickly became clear that this rabbit hole was far deeper than he could navigate alone. He uploaded images of the contents to Reddit, hoping that the collective intelligence of the internet might help make sense of what he had found. And Reddit did what it does best. It dissected, speculated, theorized, and connected the dots with the fervor of a modern-day think tank. Before long, users identified the central reference point of the writings, the biblical book of Ezekiel. In this ancient scripture, the prophet Ezekiel describes a heavenly vision involving flying wheels, within wheels radiant beings and a divine presence arriving from the sky's passages that have long fueled theories of ancient alien encounters. To the Reddit community, it became evident that the author of the suitcase contents believed fervently that Ezekiel's vision was not metaphorical, but literal, a misunderstood alien visitation cloaked in the religious language of its time. Although the suitcase offered no smoking gun, no verifiable government documents, no photographs, and certainly no tangible proof of extraterrestrial contact, it did reflect an astonishing level of dedication. This was the work of a person deeply invested in their worldview, committed enough to spend what must have been years compiling, drawing, annotating, and assembling this intricate alternate history. Whether viewed as fringe delusion, visionary art, or a provocative prompt for thought, the box of Ezekiel was undeniably a work of passion. It was a physical manifestation of belief obsession and the eternal human drive to connect the dots in the unknown. In an age where digital noise often drowns meaningful exploration, the wooden suitcase reminded thousands of viewers that sometimes the most profound mysteries are found in the most unassuming places, like a box tossed into the trash. The true origin of the Great Sphinx. Among the many marvels that rise from the Egyptian sands, few are as iconic or as enigmatic as the Great Sphinx of Giza. Towering with a lion's body and a human head, the Sphinx has captured the imaginations of scholars, mystics, and tourists for centuries. Traditionally, historians date its construction to around 4,500 years ago during Egypt's 4th dynasty, crediting it to Pharaoh Khafra. But what if this attribution is not only incorrect, but part of a grand historical deception? A growing body of researchers and alternative historians argue that the Sphinx may not only be significantly older than mainstream Egyptology suggests, but that its original form may have had nothing to do with a lion or a human head at all. One of the most striking inconsistencies about the Sphinx lies in its proportions. The head is disproportionately small when compared to its massive body, prompting several archaeologists to propose that the head had been recarved perhaps from a much larger and differently shaped original. Robert Temple, an outspoken author in the field of ancient mysteries, took this notion further. His research introduced the provocative theory that the Sphinx was originally a statue not of a lion or a pharaoh, but of the jackal-headed god Anubis, guardian of the dead and guide to the afterlife in ancient Egyptian belief. Supporting this theory are the architectural and symbolic clues found at the temple complex of Theptufa, where detailed hieroglyphics depict Anubis in a sphinx-like reclining pose with his head raised and forepaws stretched forward, exactly mirroring the body of the Great Sphinx. No such references to lions with human heads are found in these early inscriptions, nor is there any mythological precedent in Egyptian lore for such a creature. Interestingly, the term Sphinx itself comes not from Egyptian tradition, but from ancient Greek mythology, where it referred to a lion-bodied creature with a woman's head who posed riddles to travelers. The Greeks, upon encountering the statue during their visit to Egypt centuries later, simply projected their own myths onto the monument and gave it a name rooted in their own culture. The true identity of the Sphinx becomes even murkier when one examines the tomb of the famed boy king Tutankhamun. Among the treasures within his undisturbed burial chamber was a shrine dedicated to Anubis, displaying a recumbent statue nearly identical in scale and proportion to the Sphinx, only with a jackal's head instead of a human one. This, many argue, offers compelling evidence that the Sphinx originally honored Anubis and not any human king. Further muddying the waters is the revelation that many hieroglyphic texts crediting the Sphinx to Pharaoh Khafra may themselves have been forgeries. It was not uncommon for later pharaohs to rewrite history and claim the achievements of their predecessors to boost their own divine legitimacy. The Fourth Dynasty in particular has been accused by some scholars of appropriating earlier monuments and erasing the names of those who actually commissioned them. One such pre-dynastic text even describes the burial of a royal guard dog at Giza, with the writer explaining that the animal was laid to rest before the face of Anubis. This reverence for the god of the dead in a location dominated by the Sphinx lends further credence to the idea that Anubis was once the true identity of the colossal statue. Taken together, these strands of evidence point to a compelling possibility that the Great Sphinx as we know it is but a shadow of its former self. Its original purpose and visage may have been dramatically altered not by time or erosion, but by human ambition and political power. If so, the Sphinx may not only predate the dynastic period of Egypt, but also serve as a monument to a far older, deeper spiritual tradition that modern history has all but buried. Egypt's prehistoric civilization and the global zoo. The story of ancient Egypt is typically framed within the last 5 millennia of recorded history. From the construction of the pyramids to the reign of legendary pharaohs, our textbooks paint a picture of a civilization reaching its peak around 2500 BCE. But recent archaeological discoveries are challenging that timeline and hinting at a far older, more advanced society, one that may have flourished thousands of years before the first hieroglyph was ever carved. Among the most astonishing of these findings is the discovery of what many are calling the world's first zoo, a 6,000-year-old cemetery that holds the remains of exotic animals from across the globe buried in ceremonial fashion, alongside early Egyptians. This site, unearthed in what is now southern Egypt, contains the skeletal remains of animals that had no natural place in the region: ostriches, crocodiles, leopards, baboons, and most shockingly, what some believe to be the bones of a juvenile woolly mammoth. How did creatures from such diverse ecosystems, some separated by thousands of miles and others long extinct, end up in the same burial grounds? The answer may lie not in coincidence, but in evidence of a globalized civilization that predates our understanding of human development. The burial arrangements were not crude or random. The animals appear to have been intentionally preserved, often found in proximity to pools of water within large enclosures and even near what appear to be primitive veterinary facilities. Archaeologists discovered signs of surgical interventions, removed molars, trimmed claws, and incisions that indicate healing, all of which suggest early Egyptians possessed some form of animal medicine. The structures around these remains, including high stone walls and drainage systems, support the theory that this was not simply a cemetery, but an organized complex designed to house and perhaps even rehabilitate exotic animals. These revelations are even more baffling when viewed in the context of traditional historical understanding. The existence of such a zoo implies a level of technological sophistication, maritime ability, and intercultural exchange that should have been impossible in the pre-dynastic era. There were no known trade routes between Egypt and the Arctic tundras or deep African jungles in 4000 BCE. And yet the remains prove that animals from these regions were not only known to Egyptians, they were transported, cared for, and treated with a reverence typically reserved for deities. It is no secret that animals played a vital role in Egyptian religious life. Deities like Anubis, Bastet, Sobek, and Horus were all represented in animal form. But the inclusion of such rare and foreign animals in religious or royal burial grounds suggests a more complex cosmology, one in which animals were not just symbols, but living vessels of divine presence worthy of immense effort and care. This finding, however, raises even deeper questions. If ancient Egyptians could acquire and maintain such exotic species, could they have inherited knowledge and infrastructure from an earlier forgotten civilization? Could the ruins and legends we now associate with dynastic Egypt actually be remnants of a much older society, one with the capacity for global interaction, combined with geological evidence of massive global upheavals and extinction events, which we will explore in the next section? These findings suggest that humanity's story may not be linear but cyclical. The grandeur of Egypt may not be the start of civilization but a brilliant echo of something far older, something lost to cataclysm, remembered only in myth, and now slowly being uncovered beneath the sands. The cataclysm: fire, flood, and ice. In the timeline of Earth's history, one of the most significant turning points occurred around 10,000 years ago. It marked the end of the last ice age, the mass extinction of numerous species, and coincidentally the rise of the earliest known human civilizations. But was this merely coincidence, or the result of a devastating global cataclysm that wiped out a far older human epoch and forced a reset of civilization itself? The clues to this ancient disaster lie not in legend alone, but in the fossil record, geological strata, and the sudden disappearance of creatures that once roamed the earth in staggering numbers. Woolly mammoths, giant ground sloths, mastodons, saber-toothed cats, and short-faced bears were among the colossal animals known as megafauna that dominated the landscape of the Pleistocene epoch. But around 10,000 years ago, nearly all of them vanished from the face of the earth. The extinction event was not gradual, it was abrupt, as if a planetary switch had been flipped. Traditional theories attributed this to a mix of climate change and overhunting by early humans. Yet new findings challenge this simplistic view and instead point toward a triad of catastrophic events: global fires, massive flooding, and a sudden plunge into frigid temperatures. Evidence of enormous wildfires from this period exists across multiple continents. Layers of charred, carbon-rich soil known as black mats have been discovered, indicating that intense blazes scorched vast areas of forest and grassland. These fires would have produced enough smoke and soot to alter the climate, blocking sunlight and contributing to atmospheric cooling. But what could have triggered such fires on a global scale? The second element, massive flooding, provides another clue. Megaflood deposits and tsunami-like sediment layers have been found as far inland as North America and the Middle East, suggesting that parts of the planet were suddenly and violently inundated with water. Some scientists have linked these events to the rapid melting of glacial dams, releasing volumes of fresh water into the oceans and destabilizing global currents. But others suggest an even more dramatic cause: the impact of a large celestial object. For years, the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis remained speculative due to the absence of a definitive crater. Then a game-changing discovery occurred. Beneath the Greenland ice sheet, researchers identified a massive impact crater, over 30 kilometers wide, an enormous cavity that may be the smoking gun for the global cataclysm. The force generated by such an impact is estimated to be over 700 megatons, equivalent to 140 of the most powerful nuclear bombs ever built, the Tsar Bomba. This type of explosion would have vaporized all life in its vicinity, sent superheated debris into the atmosphere, ignited wildfires across the globe, and plunged Earth into a prolonged impact winter due to sunlight-blocking dust. Charles Darwin, during his explorations, noted the odd freshness of some fossil remains, particularly that of ground sloths, so well preserved they seemed almost recent. His observation hinted at just how suddenly these creatures met their end. With this mounting evidence, a clearer picture emerges. The Earth experienced a sudden violent upheaval, and whatever civilization or societal advancements existed before, it may have been reduced to dust, leaving only echoes in myth and megalithic ruins. In this light, the sudden appearance of organized civilizations around 10,000 years ago no longer seems like the beginning of human ingenuity, but rather the resurgence of it. Survivors of a global reset may have carried forward remnants of their knowledge, rebuilding slowly among the ruins of a lost golden age. Perhaps the pyramids and the Sphinx are not the achievements of early civilization, but the last fingerprints of a far older one whose end came in fire, flood, and ice. The brine pool, a lake beneath the sea. In a world overflowing with terrestrial wonders, few phenomena are as surreal or as unsettling as the discovery of a lake beneath the ocean. Deep in the Gulf of Mexico, at a depth of approximately 300 feet, scientists discovered what they nicknamed the hot tub of despair. an underwater brine pool so toxic and alien that it defies conventional understanding of marine biology and geology. It looks like something out of science fiction, a visibly distinct shimmering body of water resting within the ocean, denser and more saline than the seawater surrounding it. But its appearance is not its most alarming feature, its deadly nature is. This brine pool is composed of hypersaline water mixed with high concentrations of dissolved methane and hydrogen sulfide. Any marine creature that enters the pool dies almost instantly. It's a biological dead zone, a sort of natural chemical trap that has been described by researchers as one of the most inhospitable places on Earth. For fish or crustaceans that accidentally descend into it, there is no escape, and their bodies pile up on the brine's border, silent testimony to the lethal boundary that separates one world from another. Scientists from San Pedro, utilizing deep-sea submersibles and remotely operated vehicles, stumbled upon this anomaly while studying deep-sea ecosystems. What shocked them wasn't just the pool itself, but its surprisingly stable structure. Unlike most liquids which would diffuse into their surroundings, this brine pool remains intact due to its extreme density and a curious feature at its edge, an artificial seaming wall formed by mussels. These deep-sea mussels thrive on the methane that leaks from the brine, forming a living barrier that appears to help contain the toxic waters. The fact that these organisms have adapted to such a hostile environment is a marvel in itself, one that pushes the boundaries of what we understand about life's resilience and adaptability. This phenomenon is not entirely unique. Similar brine pools have been found in other parts of the world, including the Mediterranean and the Red Sea. Yet this one in the Gulf of Mexico stands out for its size, toxicity, and ecological distinctiveness. Studying it has opened new avenues of research into extremophiles organisms that survive in the harshest conditions, and has even prompted discussions in astrobiology. If life can adapt to thrive near this toxic abyss, could it also survive in the subsurface oceans of Europa or the methane lakes of Titan? The eerie stillness and self-contained nature of the brine pool evoke the image of a portal to another world, one that exists not in the stars, but beneath our very feet. Despite being surrounded by seawater, the lake is separate, almost sentient in its resistance to mixing, defying the fluid dynamics we expect. It hints at the ocean's secret life layers of strange chemistry, pressure, and biology stacked one atop another in a system we've only begun to understand. This discovery also forces us to reconsider the complexity of Earth's own biosphere. If such alien environments exist on our own planet, hidden beneath the waves, what else might lie undiscovered? Could other anomalies be influencing the Earth in subtle ways? Could the mythological concept of hidden worlds below the surface be rooted in a literal truth misunderstood and mystified over millennia? In short, the hot tub of despair is more than just a scientific curiosity. It's a symbol, a liquid mirror reflecting how little we truly understand about the Earth we inhabit. And as our technology deepens our reach into the ocean's darkest corners, we may discover that the most foreign landscapes are not in space, but in the silent, pressurized world beneath the sea. Earthquake lights and supernatural phenomena. Throughout history, natural disasters have often been shrouded in mystery. Among them, earthquakes stand as some of the most terrifying and unpredictable forces on Earth. But occasionally, these seismic events are accompanied by something even more inexplicable. flashes of light that dance across the sky in the moments before, during, or after the quake. Known as earthquake lights, these luminous anomalies have been reported for centuries, yet they remain one of the least understood phenomena in the natural world. Witnesses describe them as glowing orbs, flickering clouds, or even bolts of light that stretch across the horizon like silent lightning. They vary in color, white, blue, and sometimes green, and appear without thunder or storm clouds, often just before the earth begins to tremble. These lights have been reported in conjunction with some of the world's most powerful earthquakes, including the 2009 L'Aquila earthquake in Italy, the 1976 Tangshan quake in China, and the 2010 event in Chile. In each case, credible witnesses, including scientists and civilians, saw strange lights illuminating the sky, sometimes even minutes before the seismic waves struck. For a long time, mainstream scientists dismissed these reports as hallucinations or psychological responses to extreme stress. After all, fear and confusion during an earthquake could easily cause misinterpretations of natural or artificial light sources. But in recent decades, advancements in camera technology and surveillance systems have offered a different perspective. Videos now exist showing the eerie lights captured in real time, forcing the scientific community to take the phenomenon seriously. One of the leading scientific theories to explain earthquake lights is known as the positive hole theory. According to this model, when certain types of rocks, particularly quartz-rich, igneous rocks, are subjected to intense mechanical stress, they release charged particles called positive holes. These holes travel through the rock, reach the surface, and interact with the atmosphere, ionizing the air and creating light. It's a fascinating theory rooted in solid-state physics, but it still has gaps. For instance, it doesn't explain why the lights appear only in some earthquakes and not others, or why they sometimes occur before any seismic activity is detected. This inconsistency has led some to consider more unconventional explanations. Could the lights be electromagnetic emissions from tectonic plates grinding against each other? Could they be plasma discharges, similar to ball lightning, another poorly understood phenomenon? Or are they signs of something more elusive and less physical in nature? A more fringe view, but one held by some researchers and mystics alike, is that earthquake lights could be manifestations of a deeper energy, possibly even spiritual or interdimensional in origin. According to this line of thought, seismic zones act as energetic pressure points in the Earth's field. When the pressure is released through an earthquake, it not only affects the physical world, but also triggers a brief rupture in the energetic veil, allowing phenomena from other planes to bleed through, whether in the form of light, sound, or altered perception. Interestingly, many ancient cultures associated earthquakes with divine displeasure or cosmic realignment. In Japan, myths speak of Namazu, a giant catfish whose movements beneath the earth cause tremors. In Mesoamerica, earthquakes were attributed to the gods of transformation and death. It's not a stretch to imagine that the mysterious lights accompanying such events were once seen as omens or spiritual warnings. Today, earthquake lights remain a scientific puzzle. Despite credible eyewitness accounts and growing photographic evidence, we still cannot predict when or why they occur. They hover at the edge of our understanding, part natural, part mystical, reminding us that for all our knowledge, the earth continues to guard its secrets, flashing them briefly in the skies when the ground begins to quake. The alien named Val Valiant Thor. In the annals of UFO lore, there are few figures as compelling and as controversial as Val Valiant Thor. His name evokes a blend of pulp science fiction and biblical gravitas. Yet the story attached to him has persisted for decades, supported by books, lectures, and whistleblower testimonies. According to those who believe in his existence, Val Valiant Thor was not simply a visitor from another planet. He was an extraterrestrial envoy who infiltrated the highest levels of the U.S. government, walked the halls of the Pentagon, and met with President Dwight D. Eisenhower himself. His mission to offer humanity a technological and spiritual salvation, and some claim to assess the threat we pose to the galaxy. The story begins on March 16, 1957, when a craft landed in Alexandria, Virginia. Two police officers reportedly encountered a tall humanoid being near the landing site. Rather than act aggressively, the being later identified as Val Thor used a form of mental influence known as thought transference to calm the officers. Seemingly hypnotized, they drove him directly to Washington, D.C. There, Val Thor allegedly used the same telepathic techniques to bypass military checkpoints and gain entry to the Pentagon, eventually securing a meeting with President Eisenhower. These events were first popularized by Dr. Frank E. Stranges in his 1967 book, Stranger at the Pentagon, which detailed Val Thor's peaceful intentions and his efforts to offer Earth advanced technology. Among his promises were cures for all known diseases, free energy systems that would revolutionize global infrastructure, and the elimination of poverty and war. It was a vision of paradise, but one that came with a catch. According to witnesses and subsequent whistleblowers, including defense contractor Phil Schneider, Val Thor employed telepathic manipulation frequently and unapologetically, overriding human will to suit his objectives. Schneider, who died under mysterious circumstances after going public with his knowledge, claimed that his own father had worked alongside Val Thor and that he possessed a photograph of the alien taken inside a classified military facility. Though the photo has not been independently verified, Schneider's passionate testimony and his untimely death have added an eerie credibility to the tale. Skeptics, of course, dismiss the story as elaborate fantasy. Yet even within the narrative, disturbing details begin to overshadow the utopian promises. Val Thor, despite offering miraculous technology, allegedly made no effort to share it after Eisenhower declined his offer. The president, wary of dependency and social upheaval, argued that struggle was essential to human growth. He believed that eliminating adversity would lead to spiritual decay and cultural stagnation. In response, Val Thor reportedly retracted his offer and instead requested permission to bring the president to Venus. When asked about his homeworld, Val Thor described Venus as a paradise lush green and peaceful. But modern science paints a far different picture. The surface of Venus is a furnace of toxic gases, crushing pressure and searing temperatures. This discrepancy has led many to believe that Val Thor was either lying about his origins, or that his concept of Venus refers to something else entirely, perhaps a base hidden within its atmosphere or in an alternate dimension. Regardless, the inconsistency was glaring. Even more disturbing was what came next. Though detained at the Pentagon, Val Thor was frequently seen walking its halls without escort, accessing sensitive areas and seemingly immune to surveillance. Some reports describe him appearing in one room and vanishing before entering another, suggesting he possessed abilities far beyond human understanding, perhaps even the ability to shift between dimensions or states of matter. When military officials attempted to test the materials of his clothing and spacecraft, they found them completely impervious to damage. Val Thor laughed at their efforts, stating plainly that humanity lacked the understanding to affect his technology. One general, however, made a chilling observation. Val Thor had only appeared after the development of nuclear weapons. The timing, the general argued, implied that extraterrestrials were less concerned with our well-being and more interested in our destructive capabilities. Val Thor didn't deny it. In fact, he confirmed there were at least 77 other extraterrestrials embedded within governments around the world. This, he admitted, was part of a broader surveillance strategy. Whether for benevolent observation or for darker motives remains unknown. But the implication was clear. Humanity had entered a new era, one in which we were no longer alone and perhaps no longer in control. The final reflection: are we the echo of a lost world? As the dust settles across the sands of Giza, the echoes of ancient myths, mysterious discoveries, and unexplainable phenomena seem to converge into a singular, haunting question. What if everything we've been taught about human history is only the most recent chapter in a much older, far more complex story? From the cryptic contents of an old wooden suitcase referencing Ezekiel's vision to the potential recarving of the Sphinx, from an Anubis-like statue to the signs of a pre-dynastic Egyptian zoo filled with species from across the world, these are not just isolated anomalies. They are puzzle pieces scattered across time and terrain, whispering of a forgotten era, perhaps even a forgotten humanity. Each mystery, when viewed in isolation, can be dismissed as coincidence, hoax, or misinterpretation. But taken together, they form a mosaic that challenges the foundational assumptions of archaeology, biology, theology, and even geopolitics. The sudden disappearance of Earth's megafauna, the catastrophic climate shift around 10,000 years ago, and the rise of civilization immediately thereafter is more than coincidence. It resembles a global reset. Just as an apocalyptic storm wipes a slate clean, this convergence of disasters could have eradicated nearly all evidence of an advanced prehistoric civilization, leaving only fragments misinterpreted by later peoples as divine artifacts or myth. The pyramids, the Sphinx, the inexplicable brine lakes under the sea, the eerie flashes before an earthquake, and the story of Val Valiant Thor. Infiltrating world governments, these accounts all seem to point toward one truth hidden in plain sight. We are not at the beginning of humanity's journey. We may be the survivors of its rebirth. The technological feats we pride ourselves on today may only scratch the surface of what earlier civilizations achieved. Civilizations whose memory has been buried under layers of sediment, sea, and skepticism. Perhaps the ancient stories of gods descending from the heavens weren't just metaphors, but distorted memories of beings from other worlds or other dimensions. Perhaps our ancestors once walked alongside these beings, or inherited their knowledge after great upheaval. If so, modern humanity might not be forging a new path into the unknown, but retracing one already traveled long ago, its signs worn down by time and denial. Even the tale of Val Valiant Thor, as outlandish as it sounds, mirrors ancient myths of divine visitors. Like Prometheus bearing fire or Quetzalcoatl bringing knowledge, Val offers peace, healing, and energy, yet departs, rejected, misunderstood, or perhaps deceitful. The story leaves us wondering whether the figures we revere as deities in old texts were simply otherworldly beings whose purposes we misunderstood, just as we might now. So where does this leave us? Are we alone in the universe, or merely alone in our awareness? Are we the children of apes or the remnants of gods? Do we live at the dawn of civilization or its long echo? These aren't questions easily answered with microscopes or satellites. They demand imagination, humility, and a willingness to challenge what we consider truth. The Earth has kept its secrets well, but with every unearthed relic, every unexplained light in the sky, and every ancient anomaly that refuses to fit neatly into the textbook narrative, that silence grows thinner. In the end, perhaps it is not knowledge we lack, but memory.